Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nat Edwards, and I'd like to welcome you tonight to the National Library of Scotland for this evening's event. It's good to see everybody's braved the frost and the ice. I think you'll warm up quite soon this evening. It's very appropriate, I think, that the National Library of Scotland is hosting this very topical debate. This is a library which over the years has seen as one of its librarians, David Hume, one of Scotland's sort of foremost critics of thought and religious belief. We have over the, just on the other side of the foyer there, you can go and look at the original letter written by Darwin proposing Origin of Species. The original letter is just there, a few yards away. You can go and have a look at it, to the publisher John Murray III, who's on the wall just over there. You can also see Murray's editor's response, the Reverend Whitwell Elwin, and his response to the proposal, again, the letter, the first, if you like, critique of Darwin's idea. And so I think it's completely relevant that we're hosting the event tonight, and I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy it. Okay, I'd like to ask you to welcome, to explain tonight's event and to introduce its chair. I'd like to welcome Juliet Wilson from the Humanist Society of Scotland, if you'd just like to welcome her. Cheers.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the convener of the Edinburgh branch of the Humanist Society of Scotland, and welcome to our Darwin Day Eve event. This event's been organised with the Institute of Ideas and the National Library of Scotland, and I'd firstly like to give a sincere, warm thank you to Duncan, Nat, Kenny and Sue from the library for all their enthusiasm and hard work in helping us put this evening together and giving us this lovely venue to host it in, and also to the Institute of Ideas for their support and Tiffany Jenkins for chairing the debate. We've got a diverse and interesting panel who will be introduced to you in a moment, but some of them have come from very far to be here today, and I'd like to thank them all for agreeing to take part. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept of humanism, let me give you a very quick introduction. Humanism is an ethical life stance which asserts that we can lead good lives without religion or superstition. And humanists are vitally concerned with issues that affect our world. We accept other people, whatever their race, creed, colour, age, gender or sexuality. The HSS is a secular organisation, and we campaign for a secular state. More importantly, humanists think that we can only advance as a society and solve problems through discussion and debate. Therefore, we're very grateful for having events like this. But to introduce the debate over creationism is one of the hottest flashpoints in the battle between secularism and religion. While the US has seen extended conflict over the theory of evolution, new challenges to Darwinism under the guise of intelligent design have arisen in the UK. Although the Royal Society and much of the scientific establishment has denounced the teaching of creationism, a recent MORI poll revealed that over 40% of the public believe that creationism or intelligent design should be taught alongside science in schools. Yet, if the UN Special Rapporteur on Religion and Belief is to be believed, 2/3 of the UK population have no religious belief. So there's obviously much to discuss. So without further ado, let me introduce you to your chair. Dr. Tiffany Jenkins is the Director of Arts and Society Programme at the Institute of Ideas. Tiffany is a cultural sociologist whose research explores the crisis of cultural authority in museum institutions. She's interested in the legitimacy of museum institutions, cultural policy, the body as a site of identity, and the symbolic meaning of dead bodies. She also writes and broadcasts on arts and related issues. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody has to find their niche. Okay. The title of our debate this evening is Should Schools Teach Creationism? It's a very controversial discussion. We could go in a number of directions. We've got a very large and talented panel to take us there. I'm going to introduce them. They're each going to speak for 5 minutes, short and sharp. Afterwards, I'll put a few questions to them and get them to respond to each other. Then I'll go out to you. I'm really interested in what you think rather than a question and answer session, so we'll spend a fair amount of time going back and forth before I bring them in for their final remarks. So first to speak is on my far right. He's Alex McLellan. He's the founder and executive director of Reason Why, which is a Scottish Bible teaching and apologetics ministry. Second, on my immediate right, would be Christopher Brookmyre. Christopher is an award-winning novelist and playwright. His most recent novel is Snowball in Hell. He is also the Honorary President of the Humanist Society in Scotland. We'll then hear from Dr. Marc Surtees. Marc is a biologist who spent many years examining the evidence related to the debate on evolution and creation. Marc is on the board of Manor School, Christian School in Edinburgh, and assisted in science teaching at the school for 1 year. He and his wife Rosalind run Paradigm Shift, which is a science and nature shop in Leith Walk. We'll then hear from Julian Baggini. Julian's already been writing about this debate in the Herald this week. He's a philosopher and he's a pretty prolific writer. His latest book, one of many, is Complaint from Minor Moans to Principled Protests. Then we'll have Dave Perks on my far left. Dave is Head of Physics at Graveney School in London. He's also the co-founder of the Physics Factory, which is a project to rejuvenate physics education in schools. So, Alex, if I can ask you to kick us off.
Some of the most enjoyable stories are those with the ability to spring a surprise. So, have you heard the one about the institution that refused open inquiry and forced a member to resign because he welcomed dialogue with students who disagreed with him? You may have something ecclesiastical in mind, but however, there's a surprise in store. In 2008, Michael Rice, the Royal Society's Director of Education, was put under enormous pressure by his peers to resign. Why? He openly encouraged science teachers to engage students on the question of creation. He said, "I realised that simply banging on about evolution and natural selection didn't lead some pupils to change their minds at all. There is much to be said for allowing students to raise any doubts they have, hardly a revolutionary idea in science teaching, and doing one's best to have a genuine discussion." Michael Rice reflects the traditional views of many science teachers, science textbooks and scientists around the world, even fellows of the Royal Society who agreed with him. So the pressure to resign did spring a surprise. This was not the reaction of caricatured religious types from the Middle Ages. This was the Royal Society in the 21st century. What is it about creation that triggers such wrath? And why is the mere mention of creation in the science classroom context enough to froth a scientific frenzy? Is it really a mission to defend the good name of science and weed out the non-science or nonsense, as some would suggest? Dr. John Polkinghorne, a world-class physicist and member of the Royal Society, has defended the case for a creator. He spoke about the origin of the universe and said, "The theistic conclusion is not logically coercive, but it can claim serious consideration as an intellectually satisfying understanding of what would otherwise be unintelligible good fortune. This in no way seeks to be a rival to scientific explanation, but rather it aims to complement that explanation by setting it within a wider and more profound context of understanding." Polkinghorne helps us make sense of the problem by putting his finger on the pulse of the debate. It's not a question of science. It's a question of the context in which we do science. It's about worldviews. Clearly here there are two competing worldviews. The belief there is a creator and the belief there is no creator. The belief there is no creator is not a scientific conclusion. It's a philosophical position. And every time a science teacher states the universe is ultimately the result of unguided forces, they subtly remove their white coat and put on a tweed jacket. Philosophy is the locus of the debate, and both sides deserve to be fairly represented. This is not about scientists jiggling a test tube. This is about scientists standing back and trying to paint the big picture. I recently picked up a few biology textbooks, and we could happily flip through them, every one of them, chapter after chapter, page after page, without much disagreement, until we land on the few pages that present the overarching theory, the big picture, the world view. Henry Schaeffer III, one of the world's most distinguished chemists, awarded the London Royal Society of Chemistry's Centenary Medal, believes in a creator. And he defends the reasonableness of doing science within the context of this worldview. He has written to demonstrate that throughout history he is not the only one. Francis Bacon, Kepler, Pascal, Newton, Faraday, Maxwell, and we could go on, because the list is long. Belief in a creator and presenting the case for a creator is not new in science. It's part of the history and foundation for doing science. It's why the Royal Society was established. Only recently has it been erased from textbooks and eradicated from the classroom. And this purging is not based on doing science. It's based on defending philosophical presuppositions. The debate is not about the mechanism. The debate is about whether or not you can have such a complex mechanism without a mechanic. Is the universe ultimately the product of guided or unguided forces? In the science classroom, whenever a science teacher or science textbook tries to paint the big picture, there are two sides to the debate, and students have a right to know. The classroom should be a forum for controversial issues and free inquiry, an atmosphere where students can breathe and grow, fairly present the issues, and trust students to make up their own minds about what theory is best supported by the evidence. Science is not threatened by creation, because creation does not threaten science. Creation threatens the worldview of some scientists, and some scientists don't like it. This is not a debate about science. This is a debate about worldviews in the science classroom. So when science teachers present the case for no creator, science teachers should present the case for a creator.
Thank you, Alex. Christopher.
Question, should creation be taught in schools? Absolutely. I think we have a lot to learn from trying to understand where we came from. It's a good way of learning about ourselves. Here's some of the creation myths that we could be teaching kids. The no creation story was that the world's always existed, as believed by the Jainists of India. The slain monster creation story, that the world was created from the parts of a slain monster, that's believed in the Greeks, Indo-Chinese, Africa, Korea, Sumero-Babylonians. Primordial parents creation story, that the world was created by the interaction of primordial parents. The sea creation story, there's a cosmic egg creation story, and there's of course the spoken edict creation story, which is that the world sprang into being at the command of a god. I think there's an awful lot to be learned from myths and from our understanding of them. One of my favourite writers is Neil Gaiman, the comic book graphic novel writer, and there's a great moment in one of his graphic novels where the Sandman, who's the king of dreams, is speaking to William Shakespeare, and he says, "Things need not have happened to be true. Tales and dreams are the shadow truths that will endure when mere facts are dust and ashes and forgot." We've got a lot to learn from myth, but I think we would do myth a disservice when we try and take myth into the science class. It's a bit like taking Macbeth into the history class. It's a poor text for teaching history, and it does a disservice to what that text can give us in other respects. But people would make the argument, as Alex just has, that there's two sides to the story, and certainly there is, but when it comes to science, so let me demonstrate. I'm just thinking if I can get a couple of names of people from the audience so that it's not so impersonal. Young chap right in the front row. What's your name? Kareem, right, your name's Kareem, right. And lady beside you? Anne, okay, right, Anne. You're up for murder. Bad news, I'm afraid, okay? And I'm the prosecutor, right? And here's the basis of my prosecution. I'm going to show you that Kareem couldn't have done it because he's got an alibi, he's got no motive, and in fact he's got a debilitating twitch that means he can't actually hold the murder weapon, okay? So that's why it couldn't have been Kareem. Therefore, it was you, and you are going down. Is that fair?
No.
Why not?
It wasn't me.
Yep. But I've just shown you that it couldn't have been Kareem.
But that doesn't mean it had to be me.
I didn't make any case for why it was you. I only showed you a number of reasons for why it couldn't be Kareem. That is what happens with intelligent design in the classroom. Intelligent design is not a hypothesis. It is not a theory by any scientific definition. It is merely a collection